Yeah, so going into that, the title of the book is called The Whole Brain Child: 12 Revolutionary Strategies to Nurture Your Child's Developing Mind. So we'll go over the 12 revolutionary strategies. But what I really want to dig into is the part that I actually really connected with the book. It explains the whole brain child part. And so what the authors have done is they put together kind of like a depiction of what the brain, how it functions. So in a child's head, there's the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain.
Yes.
Do you remember which side is which?
So left side is the more logical, the more understanding kind of side. And then the right side is the more creative, the more emotional, the one that likes to dance and have all the kind of fun.
So you are the left brain and I am the right brain.
I mean, because I was sitting on the couch right now, I am on the left side, you're on the right side. So
okay. Yeah. So, and I'm sure we all know with relationships and people in our lives, you can easily identify people who are probably a little bit more left or a little bit more right, right?
True.
And the idea of this book is, how do you bring it all together? Instead of being more left-sided or right-sided, how do you help balance the two sides of the brain so that you can fully function with your whole brain instead of just one side of your brain? And they paint really great pictures in here to help teach through this. So one example that the authors give is imagining a river. So you've got the left side of the bank and the right side of the bank, and you're flowing. And if you're flowing peacefully, then you're kind of in balance and harmony of both sides. But then when you crash to one side of the bank or the other, that's when you get stuck. That's when, you've got a rock hurting your boat or whatever, and you've got to figure out how to get back into the middle so you can keep flowing.
Yes.
So that's the idea of the left and the right side of the brain. There's also two other parts of the brain that this was brand new information to me, that it's called the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain.
Yes.
And the way the authors paint this is, imagine a house. So you've got the downstairs floor, like a 2-story house. Your downstairs floor is the downstairs part of your brain. This is your basic primitive functioning brain. It's in charge of things like blinking and breathing and quick impulses, just your primitive features. And then you've got your upstairs brain. This is kind of like, you've got skylights. Imagine like a really nice library. You're on the second floor, so you've got a higher perspective of things. It gives you kind of like a wisdom. What I learned from this, surprisingly, is that your brain doesn't fully develop until you're at the age of 25. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
25.
And that's the upstairs brain, right? That one's still under construction for a long time.
Yeah.
And until you're 25, it actually finishes. The whole house is finished at that point.
Yes.
I mean, I would argue I'm still under construction. I'm almost 40, but my brain probably is not.
With that.
I'm still developing, but.
Yeah, so then it kind of gives you perspective for children. And it's this idea that, like, hey, sometimes your kids are not fully aware, their perspectives aren't as high or wise as an adult per se, and it's because they're not fully developed until the age of 25. So we can't really expect them to know everything that we know. And then I think what helped me have much more empathy for my children after reading this is understanding that, hey, sometimes they can sneak upstairs for a little bit to check out the construction. They're playing upstairs for a little bit, but because it's under construction, because it's developing, they'll always have to go back downstairs because it's dusty, it's not finished up there. They go back downstairs. And what that helps me understand is sometimes my kids get it and sometimes they don't. And that's okay. And what I previously always thought was like, you knew this before. Why do you keep doing this? Or like, there was this one time you did it right. So because they knew it one time, they should always know it. And that's not the case.
It's not. And I think that's really helped with my relationship with my daughter as well. Is it's helped me identify parts that I really need to work on with her, understand some of the tantrums that she'll throw. And I mean, my daughter's 6. And so, they're getting increasingly more, there's a lot more vocabulary that happens. So she's able to express herself a lot more versus just throwing physical tantrums. She's also emotionally throwing a lot of tantrums that way too. And now I've been able to find, like, with this book, like, hey, that's an upstairs, downstairs. And we'll go into that more later. But it's really helped me build that relationship with her too. And I think that was really important to see because, otherwise I used to just treat every tantrum as the same thing. Yeah. And I wouldn't know what to do any different. So
knowing now you've got a left side and the right side of the brain, you've got your upstairs and your downstairs part of the brain, we know that we need to help our children regulate and be balanced on all of those parts. The other thing that is really neat is that it's the same concept for adults.
Yes.
So when you're parenting, you have to be aware and identify, am I parenting with my left side of the brain, or am I parenting with my right side, or am I right in the middle? So here's the thing, guys. When your child is reacting or expressing themselves from the right side of the brain. And that's the emotional side. So this is where we see a lot of and I'm generalizing more for toddlers and younger kids, more of those tantrums and outbursts and things like that. Usually those are more from the right side of the brain. If you come in as a parent, parenting from the left side of the brain with the logic and the explanations, it's never going to work, right? It's you have to help get to the right side of the brain, right? So think about that river. They're on the right side, you're on the left. You can't shout from the left and explain how they're going to get back into the middle. You actually have to get into the river, get to the right side, help them, steer them towards the middle. Once they're in the middle, then they're more receptive to logic and reasoning, explaining, and even disciplining. So what I like about this book is that they do talk through things like disciplining and helping your child know what's appropriate, what's right, and what's wrong, versus some of the more what would you say, like softer parenting books where it's more all about like, oh, it's okay. It's
you
okay,
kind of validate every single feeling they have, and even though you may want to correct it, you shouldn't, because otherwise you might become a quote unquote bad parent.
So this is very well rounded in that aspect. So helping speak the same brain language as your child, and then connecting with them that way.